Hello, everyone, and welcome to the November SoFloPoJo launch. I call it the launch. I've mashed flash launch together because this is flash fiction, and who has time, really? I feel like if you're going to talk to me for more than 1,000 words, I don't want to hear it. It's like I've been affected. So but I love Flash as all of you do. And I'm Francine Witte, by the way. I'm the editor of the Flash editor for SoFlo. And at the controls, my co-pilot is Michael McInerney, who's running the Zoom. He's our editor in chief of SoFlo. So um, tonight we're going to hear from, well, we're going to hear all the stories that were in the November issue. I'll be reading for some of the people who aren't here, but most of the people are here, and we have some really great people listening in the audience. And welcome, and thank you for listening. And I'm going to start with just a short little flash that I like to do that to kind of break the ice. And this is a journal called Quick Fiction, which was around, in the aughts, I think, up until like 2011, something like that. But it was one of those journals that I always loved. And I never got in, and I was like, oh, and then it closed. And it was like, oh, no, I can never get in there. So I like to read their stories. They're wonderful stories. This is called, and this is by Alex Haber. There is no such thing as quiet where I come from. When she looks at me in the kitchen, she sees me with her bones. They are old, protruding. Her eyes are set on her movements, thin, protective, shielding. When she asks me about my day, the words leak from her lips, dribble down her chin. I move by her to grab a glass. He's in the study, she tells me. I haven't asked her anything. She is scratching wet pans with her fingernails, grinding them down to the skin. The water from the faucet is gushing over everything, is shouting and drowning the loose phrases traveling down her clothes. You better not bother him, I make out as I leave the room, as if those would ever be my thoughts. Alex Haber from Quick Fiction. Okay, so now we're going to move to our readers, our contributors from the November SoFlo Flash section. First, we're going to start with Michael Cisniewski, right? Mike Cisniewski is the author of 4 collections of stories, including the recently released The Amnesiac in the Maze, Braddock Avenue Books 2023. He serves as editor-in-chief of Moon City Press and Moon City Review, a great journal, as well as interviews editor of Smoke Lawn Quarterly, another great journal. Michael Cisniewski.
Thank you, Francine, and thank you, Michael, and thank you, everybody, for coming and being in the journal, or just coming even if you're not in the journal. I think I'm going to read the piece. I know I'm going to read the piece. I don't know why I'm saying I think I am. I'm going to read the piece that's in the journal, and that's because I think there's a 1,000-word cap. It's exactly 1,000 words because I always go exactly to the exact word amount, so I know how long it is before without having to count it, but so that's the only thing I'm going to read because it'll be on the longer side. But anyway, this story came up because we were talking about Bible characters in my classes, and we were talking about random people, and I think I just said the sentence kind of by accident. What do we really know about Bartholomew? I think that was like a late edition apostle, like a replacement apostle that came on later, but I don't think there's anything written about him in the Bible. He was just an apostle, and there's Saint Bartholomew and stuff, but I don't think we know a whole lot about him. He doesn't get a lot of screen time. And so I was going to write a story about that, but then it turned out to be something completely different. But the story is still called, What Do We Really Know About Bartholomew? My sister-in-law talks in her sleep. I'm not supposed to know this, but I do. I'm not proud, and neither is Eliza. It's something to do. It's something we do. My wife, Rhonda, Eliza's sister, works 5 nights a week, Sunday to Thursday, the register at the pilot. Rhonda leaves for work. Eliza comes by a half hour later. I'll text her when Rhonda's not working, and that saved us a couple of times. Pretty suspicious, me sending a text whenever Rhonda tells me she's sick, and one time I thought Rhonda was on to me. False alarm. I promised myself to be more subtle, and so far Rhonda has no idea. The last thing I want to do is hurt people I love. Most of Eliza's sleep talk is nonsense. I've kept a journal, Eliza's sleep talk. It's hidden in the notes on my phone. Eliza yells out, I told you I don't want that, and I type it in. She says, give her the handkerchief, and I type it in. I don't want this. It's not funny. Why so white? I used to ask Eliza before she left in the morning if she remembered what she says. She always said no. She didn't want to know. I decided not to worry about it and stop asking. Bartholomew wants to kill me. What she says most often doesn't mean anything, especially since my name isn't Bartholomew. One night, Eliza never comes over, doesn't answer my texts or calls. I fall asleep on the couch. The door unlocks just after 1 a.m., and I think it's her, but it's Rhonda. She's frantic. Eliza has disappeared. Police found her car running on the side of the road by the woods, her purse and phone inside. It was less than a mile from here. It's like she was trying to get to me, to us, for help, but she didn't make it. By 8 a.m., a full-on search has commenced. Cops from every surrounding county have joined in. There's volunteers, there's dogs, there's stations with maps and walkie-talkies and hot cocoa. The owner of the pilot has offered a $3,500 award. Rhonda is a mess. We never went to bed. The cops say we should stay at home in case Eliza calls or shows up. I know that's dumb. Eliza doesn't have her phone, and if she comes by, that means she's fine. The cops just want Rhonda out of the way. One of the officers nods at me before he leaves. I picture a scenario where I follow him out to his cruiser, and he says I'm a good husband and levels with me, confides that Eliza is probably dead, that I should prepare Rhonda for the worst. That doesn't happen. They tell us to call if we hear anything. They advise us not to talk to reporters. They tell us they're doing their best. One guy instructs us to pray. I ask about Bartholomew. I think about Bartholomew. There can't be that many Bartholomews in the area. Eliza could be down in a cellar, chained up, the only Bartholomew in 500 miles, one neighborhood over. He could be registered, already on their radar. I could save Eliza, my sister-in-law and lover. But how would that play out? What would I say when they ask how I know that name? I'll have to answer questions. That shouldn't matter now, but Bartholomew probably isn't anyone, just more sleep talk nonsense. I'd blow things wide open, me and Eliza, over nothing. I'd ruin 3 lives. Rhonda would be devastated. Rhonda would leave me. Rhonda might not care if they ever find her sister. I'd be risking an awful lot. What do we really know about Bartholomew anyway? A day later, they find Eliza's clothes in the woods, jammed under rocks. Someone put them there. Clothes don't come off and get stuffed under rocks because the wind blows. The cops are in our living room and Rhonda unloads, is hysterical. I think about Bartholomew again. I pull Rhonda in tight. The cops ask if there's anything else we can think of that can help. Rhonda says no. I thank them for their services. That night, Rhonda and I watch TV. Eliza's picture and a hotline number are on the bottom of the screen, every local channel, no matter what's on, even during commercials. Rhonda is near comatose, not blinking, not moving. After hours of silence, she announces Eliza is probably dead. I tell her we don't know that. She sobs openly, says I don't know what I'm talking about. She slaps me on the arm. She nearly chokes, she's wailing so hard. I blurt, does the name Bartholomew mean anything to you? Rhonda stops crying. She stands up, says, why did you say that name? I don't know how to answer. I think I heard Eliza mention it once. Last Thanksgiving, I think. It just popped into my head. Rhonda nods. She says this is an excellent lead. She says she has to call the detective. She goes into the bedroom. I feel like I've contributed. Within 10 minutes, the detective in 3 uniforms are in our kitchen. 2 of them escort Rhonda outside, and the other 2 tell me to sit down at the table. Rhonda told us about Bartholomew, the detective says. I nod. Bartholomew was a clown at Eliza's 6th birthday party. He gave her nightmares. The girls shared a bedroom. Every night for years, Eliza would yell out in her sleep about Bartholomew. She only did it when she was sleeping. She blocked it out otherwise. I nod again. How long were you sleeping with Eliza? The detective says. Better yet, where'd you stash her body? Thank you. I even mentioned Thanksgiving, so it's a Thanksgiving story. So
Timely story, yes.
Yeah, it's so Thanksgiving.
That was awesome. What an awesome story that is. Michael Cisniewski, really great, very engrossing. Addis, right there. Next we had John Brantingham. I don't see he's here, so I'll put that aside for right now. Maybe he'll show up. And I will read for Shibashish Barak. I'm going to read his whole story because it's very short. Firecracker. Festivals are always a great time to be with your family. Gatherings of relatives and friends, lavish dinners, loud, humorous conversations, and between everything, me. Being the smallest lady member of the family, I always have the privilege of being at the spotlight, dashing around from one room to the other, dancing and hopping without any burden of school bag on my shoulder or the thought of holiday homework. These times always felt like movies, but sometimes my family tends to ignore me. Like that night of Diwali, perhaps the firecrackers were too loud for my screams to reach them, or perhaps they thought Uncle was there to take care of me. Ooh, I just got to chill. That's Shabash's Barak. Great story. Next, we're going to hear from Jessica Klimish.
Yes.
Is that how you pronounce it? I should have asked you also how to pronounce it.
That's correct, though. You got it.
Jessica Klimish, she, her, is a writer and editor whose creative work, mostly flash and microfiction, has appeared or is forthcoming in Cleaver, Tramset, Atticus Review, Ghost Parachute, Bending Genres, Desert Up Pocket, The Dribble Drabble Review, and Railroad Review, among others, also all great journals. She lives in Sylvania, Ohio, and is currently working on a collection of linked flash stories. Learn more at jessicaclimish.com. Jessica Klimish.
Thank you, Francine. I am just going to read the piece that was in this issue, which is very short. Red light, green light. At the red light, a clown tumbles from the passenger side of a two-door Mini, waves to a boy on the sidewalk, adjusts his nose, circles the car. On the heels of the first, another clown exits, trips over his shoes, spills like Skittles onto asphalt. More clowns emerge, dozens of them, rainbows of revelry, the first few now pushing their way back in through the same door, bodies squeezing, squeaking, honking. The boy on the sidewalk screams, hugs his mother's leg, but then honks his own nose, and synthetic curls bobbing, scrambles into the Mini just as the light turns green. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessica Klimish.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love clown stories. And, you know, clowns were not always scary. When I was a kid, we loved our clowns. You know, Bozo and who's the other one? Emmett Kelly and Clarabelle. I'm dating myself here, but it's okay. And then all of a sudden, clowns got scary. I don't know what happened. Well, maybe Stephen King a little bit, right? Okay. Next. Thank you again, Jessica Klimish. Next, we're going to hear from Al Kratz, who, you know, I know Al for quite a few years now. We used to be in this group called the Flash Monsters. I mean, I guess technically we still are with Patricia Bedard, who's here. And we met for like throughout COVID, every Saturday night on Zoom. There's about 6 or 7 of us, maybe. I think officially there were 9, but we didn't always all show up. And I'm going to tell you that got us through some pretty hard times. And a lot of the stories that I went on to publish, like we would read our stories to each other, and it wasn't really a critique. It was more of a, here's my story, and it was great. And it was the Flash Monsters. And so Al Kratz was one of them. And Al Kratz is a writer from Des Moines, Iowa. He's the author of the Tony Bone stories from Ad Hoc Fiction, which was one of their novellas in Flash. I think he was runner-up, if I'm not mistaken. And Off the Resting Sea from Above Ground Press. And more of his work can be found at alkratz.com. My buddy, Al Kratz.
Thanks, Francine. I'll just read 2 300-worders. The first one was in the journal in November, and it's called Sweat. The rhythm guitarist is sweating impressively. I've known that kid since he was a babe, loved his spirit from the get-go. He's always had the attitude of a champ. His mom is in the crowd. I'm reminded of her first date with the boy's dad, my best friend since I was 3, where she walked in on me face down over a mirror full of beautiful lines of cocaine. Hey, it was my duplex, not hers. She only walked in because I'd broken the toilet on their side. If you pay attention, the world has always been ending in various ways. I've been always able to keep the party going. It's my end of days skill. Not that the show must go on. I don't care that much for the show. I don't even care that much about myself. There's an inertia part of me and part my stalker. I'll never call the authorities. Chase me relentlessly. I do not care. The storm is always over my shoulder. Sometimes it's fun to look at it, sometimes not. Somehow the end of the world has let me age. Somehow I never really have to pay. Not in full. Damn, that kid is sweating a lot too. Holy cow. The girls around me, I like their eyes and I like their legs. And I like the way they wonder what the hell I am. I get it. It's a fair question. I'm a time traveler. I've been here before. I've seen the end of the world so many times, and I've seen the loop, and I've seen that kid grow up. I've seen his parents break apart. Everyone breaks. Still, I've seen us somehow survive, somehow grow, somehow end up the rhythm guitarist banging his head, spraying the crowd with the sweat of all of our somehows. And the other one is called You Have So Many Choices. You have so many more choices than fight or flight. When you encounter a bear in the woods, lock arms with a friend. Make yourselves appear stronger. Transform into a collective self. When they ask how little girls like you survived the bear, shrug your unlocked shoulders and agree. Isn't it a wonder? Just in case, hang out with stronger people. Maybe that guy from your co-ed softball team with the tattoo on his neck. It might feel counterintuitive, but don't confuse the number of fights you will witness with the number of fights you will be in. Just don't fall in love with the tattoo man. When you fall in love with the tattoo man and your mother whispers to everyone that her son-in-law is in jail over a little fireworks thing, tell her, Mom, it wasn't firecrackers. He's in prison for making bombs. You're neither fighting your mother nor fleeing the truth. You're standing your ground. When you encounter a carpenter bee in the woods, be still. The male has no stinger. It's safe to call his bluff. The female only stings when provoked. As she flies around your head, repeat to yourself, she's not really a bee. She's not really a bee. She's not really a bee. When you lose your wedding ring in the woods, let it be. This is the universe singing to you. Listen to all she has to say. You don't have to fight or run from the universe. You have so many more choices than that. When you divorce the tattoo man, testify how so many things aren't even worth fighting for. It's not fight or flight if you don't care who you're getting away from or where you're going to. You've seen birds. Sometimes flying is just for the sake of flying. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Al. Great stories. So I always like to acknowledge the people in the audience. We have some great writers who are also just listening tonight. Patricia Bedard, Chelsea Stickle, Kelly Borges, Karen Crago, and I don't know Azim or Rachel, but thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. It's always great to have good audience. Thank you, Al, again. All right, now I'm going to read for Carl Boone. I'm just going to read part of his story, and you can read the rest on the website on SoFlo. So Carl Boone is the author of the full-length collection Places and Names Poems, the Nazonia Press 2019. His writings appeared in many journals and magazines, including Prairie Schooner, Posit, and Washington Square Review. He received his PhD in 20th century American literature from Ohio University in 2007, and currently lives in Izmir, Turkey, where he teaches courses in American literature at Dakus Aylu University. I know I totally wrecked that pronunciation. Okay, this is just part of his story. A man and his trumpet. A trumpet's not the sound it makes. It's brass and space, a bell, a narrow corridor, a darkness mostly. Abby's father lived in the darkness. His trumpet lay atop a stack of books in his studio, and he only touched it when he'd been walking down Main Street and felt hints of fall in the air. He liked looking at it the way other men liked looking at motorcycles or women. If he played an hour, he philosophized 100 and regretted not philosophizing more. For always something called his wife with news, or news of his wife, or a thunderstorm. The three were the same. Abby was 16 and played the piccolo in the high school marching band. Had she been a boy, he would have called her Miles, no matter his wife's objections. On Friday night at the stadium, he stood atop the uppermost bleacher and watched her at halftime. Afterwards, they ate pizza, and he reminisced. And I'll stop there. So I hope that is just enough of a titillation for you, Carl Boone. Okay, next we're going to hear from Josh Price. Josh Price loves music, coffee, and cemeteries.
Hi, everybody.
He lives in Northern California, and with his patient wife and terrible dog. The Los Angeles Review, SoFloPoJo, South Florida Poetry Journal, F3LL Magazine, Faux Moi, and others have published his flash, and Scribble Magazine has published his short fiction. Visit him at josh-price.com, Twitter and Instagram at Time Pinto. Josh Price.
Okay, I'm going to read the one from this month's SoFlo, and then another real short one. So here goes. All the vastness. I look up. All the vastness of space is laid out before me. It could be the ocean late at night if I were somewhere up high looking down, startled by minuteness, humbled at the feet of whatever existence pretends to be. I don't trust it. I felt it sharp teeth before. I go gliding, trapped inside a bottle, suppress a wicked urge to jump up and down, to watch it all crack and chip around me, risk the cutting. Chased after the stressing lines until all I hear is glass breaking. I spin and spin, but slow, like suicide by bottle of Jack, head over feet and giddy like anyone who's ever been in love with feeling good. I'm in space that's endless. Time's not here because it never was. I look down, everything transparent, no one winning at anything, but everyone trying to convince me this is what winning looks like. Life should have purpose, but purpose isn't real. I'm so tired these days, aren't you? Before and after our lives were dead, and I didn't ask to be disappointed. Up until we go back to wherever it is we came from, we just got to figure it out, deal with it. The problem is no one really knows how to deal with whatever it is we're supposed to figure out, or figure out whatever it is we're supposed to deal with. We are the torsion of protons, neutrons, and electrons twisting into existence, bashing into one another so violently that we all merge together and become something different, sometimes better, sometimes worse, so we can later expire with a glare into a star-filled sky, whispering in an infinite second, "How dare you?" So I continue to spin, holding my breath and in love with forever, looking for an abyss like a black hole to swallow me in circles, stretching me out like putty until I'm too thin to matter. The end. Okay, and Fire God. This one was in Burning Word Literary Journal in February 2022. Fire runs screaming down the hillside like an insane deity, crackling in a forgotten tongue and making believers. Fear is catching, animals running from death, cars blaze by, people clutching steering wheels, deer in the headlight stares lamenting pets. There was no time. Near the mountain, prisoners dig a perimeter, pretending the roaring all around can't harm them. Fires. Propane tanks are flying in the sky. Do-it-yourself missiles launched from backyard silos. Beetle-blighted pines ignite, squealing sap boiling before the explosion. Smoky air and ashes trying to be everywhere, falling like dirty snowflakes. Red lights gleam in the darkness. Ambulances sing warnings, parading down streets, offering in their wounds fragile as porcelain. At the gas station, vehicles crammed together like bumper cars, people shouting at people who can't change a single thing. Cell phones in hand, everyone uploading their video. We are safe. All over the country, people watch the nightmare that isn't happening to them. Here, fires happen every year. Children sob for toys lost. Parents worry about what comes after this. Cots are all 6 feet apart at the shelters. Please wear a mask, the signs say, but not everyone will. Truth is point of view. Beliefs are arbitrary. Fire is truth. Everything here will burn. Thank you.
Wonderful stories, Josh.
Thanks.
Thank you for reading them. Josh Price. Awesome, awesome stuff. And Michael Cisniewski says in the chat that Rachel is one of his students, which is awesome to have your student come. So welcome, Rachel. Next, we're going to hear from Amy Marquez, who is really one of the, a very relatively new to Flash, I think, but one of the brightest lights around. There's like, Flash has been like so exciting to just watch all the people coming in and just lighting up the landscape with their wonderful stories, and Amy is certainly doing that, and as well as her collages. So Amy Marquez grew up between languages and places and learned from an early age the multiplicity of narratives. She penned children's books, barely read medical papers, and numerous letters before turning to short fiction and visual poetry. She has work published in journals and anthologies, including Street Cake Magazine, SoFloPoJo, Bending Genres, Gone Lawn, Ghost Parachute, Chicago Quarterly Review, and Reservoir Road Literary Review. You can read more at amybookwhisperer.wordpress.com. And feel free to put your information in the chat for each other, by the way. Amy Marquez.
What a sweet introduction. I'm all emotional now. That's very kind of you, Francine. And Francine is like a mentor friend, and I've literally stalked her online and read everything she'd written and submitted to the places she'd submitted before I actually met her in person. So I'm a total fan. Okay, so I'm going to start with the one that was published in SoFlo, and it's called Heir Apparent. Adette stood before Seb, just as she had all those months when she'd first visited Eden Ranch with her parents. The same, utterly different. This time, her back was straight, her gaze unflinching, her arms full of the things he'd thrust onto her, a baby boy, 2 little black cauldrons, and the promise of a life in his shadow, raising one of his children. She wanted none of it. Mary watched her husband's wild-haired mistress stand before him. She was a child, younger than Mary had been when she married him, younger than Mary's only living child, Seb's only legitimate child, albeit a girl. Odette was even more beautiful now that a child had grown inside of her, grown her insides until she was filled with the kind of soft strength that makes some women goddesses. The girl never lowered her gaze. "I'm leaving," she said. "I want nothing that ever belonged to you." Mary recognized the feeling, although she'd never allowed herself the words. Candace couldn't hear the girl from her usual hiding place in the kitchen alcove, but she could see it all perfectly. Seb smiled at Odette as he'd once smiled at Candace years ago when her breasts were as high and firm as her hopes. He'd kept every promise he'd ever made her. A house within easy reach of the big house, just beyond the gardens, a fully furnished kitchen with solid iron cauldrons and an overflowing pantry, and schooling for the child and all the other children that followed. Security. She hadn't known then, when she'd eagerly given in, what she would be giving up. She couldn't have known what it would feel like to acquiesce. Seb looked down at Odette. She would always be tiny, but she was rounder now, breasts straining a little against buttons, jaw softened by the weight his child had gifted her. He loved her a little then, holding his son and the black cauldrons he'd gifted her as a memento, a promise of more. He'd already told his men to start building a hut east of the orchard. She was so beautiful that it took a while for her words to sink in. She hadn't raised her voice. Come to think of it, he'd barely ever heard her voice before. She was leaving. She was leaving the child behind. She was leaving him. Candace almost laughed. The girl had pushed the baby and the pots into his arms and walked away. He looked small then, ridiculous even. The two witch cauldrons hung, clacking from one hand, while the baby, awake now, cried in his awkward hold. Candace sunk into the shadows of her hiding place. He would be looking for her soon. Someone would have to quiet the child. He hated crying infants. Mary stepped into the room in silence. Her usual ebb and flow of berating and appeasing retreated, awed by the vanishing girl's quiet dignity. She stood in front of the husband she no longer feared. She waited for him to look at her, paused to take in the confusion rippling over his face, held out her arms, took the child, pressed the infant to her flat, empty chest, whispered vows. Odette told herself not to look back, but her child's cries filled her breasts and she turned, overflowing, tears streaming, until the child stopped crying, soothed, rocked by Miss Mary on the porch of the big house. And a second story, this one has not been published yet. And it's just a little micro called We Are Made of Scraps. We are made of scraps. We are no phoenix. We do not rise in glory, wings fully formed from the ashes of incinerated pasts. We are an amalgam of dust and skin flakes and bitten nails and tears and sweat held together by strands of broken webs of conversation and awkward embraces. We construct ourselves, prickling and poking to patch together discarded stories, mending ourselves with knotted threads, embroidering rags and scraps into pockets we stuff with the healed bruises we call wisdom. We grow into ourselves until our bodies are large enough to sag and fold, until our loose ends unravel and touch each other like the roots of neighboring trees, and our wingspans are wide enough to wrap around all that we have become. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. That was beautiful. Those last few lines especially. Amy Marquez. Okay, next I'm going to read for Steve Gerson. I'll just read a little bit of his story, a few paragraphs. Steve Gerson writes poetry in Flash about life's dissonance. He has published in Cafe Lit, Panoply Zine, Crack the Spine, Decadent Review, Vermilion, in parentheses, Wingless Dreamer, Big Ben Literary Magazine, Coffin Bell, and more, plus his chapbooks, Once Plain Straight Viral, and The 13th Floor, Step into Anxiety from Spartan Press. At midnight, she decided. He'd come home late again, saying, "No more, babe, I promise. It won't happen again." Just like he'd said last week, the week before, last month, every damn month. "Trust me, hun, I mean it." Crossing his heart like a 5-year-old having been caught taking an extra cookie from his mom's sideboard. Like a 10-year-old caught smoking behind the barn. Like a 15-year-old when I'd bet he crossed his heart at the sheriff arrested him for killing the neighbor's kitten, wringing its neck and hammering the cat to Mrs. Smith's red oak with 4 10-penny nails. No more is right, she thought, as she stumbled to bed, scratching his ass, kicking his lizard skin boots off. She was through believing his pleas for forgiveness. She was through imbibing his lies, swallowing them like she'd seen him chug a can of beer, belch, wipe his mouth on his left sleeve, then crush the can, like he'd crushed her trust, her hope. As she heard him snore, all nasal and congested from his twice broken nose, she started gathering. She picked up little Bobby, 3 years, 6 months, from his thrift store crib, placing him under her right arm while she grabbed his blue teddy with her left. She'd get what she could later. And I'm going to stop there. Okay, you just have to read the rest on the website. Steve Gerson. Okay, next, going to hear from Laura Nagel. Laura Nagel is a writer and translator of prose and poetry from French, Spanish, and Irish. Her flash fiction has appeared in Iron Horse Literary Review and is forthcoming in Leon Literary Review. Her translation of Prosper Mérimée notorious 1827 hoax, Songs for the Bousselet, was recently published by Frayed Edge Press, and her translation of short prose and poetry have appeared in Agni, the Southern Review, the Los Angeles Review, Circumference, and elsewhere. Laura Nagel.
Thanks so much, Francine, and it's great to be here and to hear so many of your stories in your own voices. I'm going to read my piece from this issue of SoFloPoJo. It is called House of Sorrows. The house would not be sold. The listing agent called the market funky. "Don't change a thing," she said. "A house like this one, blending historic charm with modern updates, would sell soon enough." Dolores knew better. There was interest, but no one could get as far as the front door. Viewing appointments kept getting canceled at the last minute, always for dramatic reasons. Family emergency, car wouldn't start, water main break. It couldn't all be coincidental. The house hadn't minded Dolores's benign occupation for the first decade or so, but ever since she began watching HGTV, she'd been making what she called upgrades. She'd welcomed plumbers and electricians inside to fix what wasn't broken. The banisters and molding had been stained and stripped and painted and stripped and stained again, a litany of indignities. And now the house was getting its revenge. The only way Dolores could ask its forgiveness was to undo what she'd done. She gave away the Viking range and reinstalled the old wood-burning stove. She had the rainfall shower replaced with a clawfoot tub. It wasn't enough. She unplugged the cable box and disconnected from Wi-Fi for a week as an experiment, but the viewings still got canceled. Food poisoning, apparently. So she gave up and plugged it all in again. The television went right to the last channel she'd watched, which was HGTV, and the house's foundation groaned. The listing took itself off Zillow. If she was going to be stuck with this house for good, she thought, she might as well take down the old wallpaper in the guest bedroom, the only part of the house she'd never changed. Dolores had always imagined it would be a nursery someday, but that ship had sailed. It would make a nice home office space, better than propping her laptop on the dining room table. She would choose new wallpaper, something that would look professional as a Zoom background. Or maybe she'd paint the walls if they were in good enough condition. Skinning the walls and baring the plaster, the connective tissue that covered the house's old bones, now marred by the remnants of long-dried wallpaper paste. Most of the glue softened when she applied a YouTube-recommended mixture of hot water, dish soap, and baking soda to it. But there was one patch on which the adhesive remained, stubborn and resistant to scrubbing. The stain had a pattern of its own, a human face, small and round, like a baby's. She decided she'd done as much as she could for one day. In the morning, Dolores tried again with a store-bought solvent, the kind used by professionals. It didn't work, at least not the way she'd anticipated. The stain was still there, but its borders budged, making it less round, more oval. The following day, she did not touch the wall except to measure the stain, which was visibly different. No longer a baby's face, but a toddler's, the features more distinct than before. She entered the room each day only to record her findings. The changes to the overall size of the stain were small but measurable. The nose gradually took shape, and the lips grew more defined, bow-shaped. It was on the 8th day that Dolores first recognized the face as her own. All that week, she was tormented by the awkward, toothy smile she'd presented to school photographers year after year. She declined to take her measurements for a few days, unable to overcome her aversion to her middle school-aged self. On the 19th day, she thought it was almost like looking in a steam-fogged mirror. After day 30, the face on the wall appeared progressively more fatigued until day 41, when it resembled the retouched headshots that made her look 30 again. Dolores awoke on the 49th day, feeling an optimism she hadn't experienced in weeks. Having only just turned 48, she had no 49-year-old face for the house to mimic. But the face was still there, albeit with a slightly different expression than the day before, and she tried in vain to scrub it away. On the 52nd day, Dolores got her wish. The paste residue began to dissolve on its own. It wasn't until day 55, when all that remained were faint outlines of a jaw and eye sockets, that she realized there was only one way this house would let go of her. Thank you.
Wow, that was awesomely spooky. I'm like looking around my room here. It was wonderful, Laura. And you can see why, I have so much fun with this job, just, like reading through these like all the submissions and pulling these stories out, from the pile and putting them all together and then hearing them again in a different way. It's almost like hearing them again for the first time. So it's wonderful. It's wonderful to hear all these. And thank you, Laura Nagel. Next, we're going to hear from Tammy Evans. Tammy Evans lives in a tiny house on a peninsula with her husband and an adventure cat. Her location device is her loud laugh. She's currently working on a collection of connected flash stories. Her fiction has been published in Gone Lawn, Cabinets of Feed, Spelk, 5 on the 5th, Clover and White, Fiction Berlin Kitchen, and others. Connect through Instagram at writer Tammy. Tammy Evans.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, and I know many people on the call as well. I'm going to read my story from the issue and then one small micro after that. So, shots of emotion. This came from a conversation with another writer friend about what would happen if we didn't have any fear. The line is long at the clinic of desperation. The spaces are the size of the person in front of you. The building looks sterile and we smell ash. Some of us look numb. Some of us look like we're coming out of our skins. Some of us have the emotions we are desperate to get rid of on our sleeves, faces, torsos, and in the kicks of our feet. We are all here for the same thing, a shot that eliminates emotions. When you enter the revolving door, a queue snakes back and forth in front of a board that stretches from one side of the building to the other. The numbers written in white chalk correspond with the ailment the shot relieves. Every day, the board changes, but the numbers stay the same. Shot number 9 takes away loneliness and its disappointment. It is the fragrance and taste of lavender and lemon on the tongue that disappears too prematurely. With no loneliness, you become more social. You choose to go out and take a chance on interactions. You have zing. You call that friend from college you've been meaning to, rather than sitting in your studio apartment eating vanilla ice cream with crumpled wavy potato chips and chocolate sauce. You take action. You order and pay, and then your glasses appear on the bar lit from the inside in front of you. Every shot is a different color. They don't seem to match the emotions you release. Fear should be gray or black, but it is orange. Your handler watches you drink it down. They all taste like the worst thing you can think of. It is different for everyone. There is a disclaimer written in small block letters along the bottom of the board. Be aware the shot does not eliminate the origin or the root cause of the emotion. The shot is temporary relief for a maximum of 6 months. Shot number 2 takes away fear. With no fear, you take all the risks. With the shot, you no longer taste metal hot dogs with ketchup. Instead, you take up hobbies like parkour on high-rise buildings, and you tell bosses what you really think. You forget about the consequences of any situation. There is a high you cannot explain that is better than any natural man-made drug. Shot number 7 takes away love and tastes like the sweetness of sugar cubes melting. You isolate yourself and have no desire for connection. People who take this shot get a lot done in those 6 months. The career-oriented take this shot too many times in a row. The long-term side effects are yet unknown. The 2 most popular shots on the board are number 9 and number 2, but the most dangerous is number 11. Shot number 11 takes away pain and the swords that stab and stab, trying to teach you a lesson you cannot grasp. This is the most dangerous because people die. You take away pain and people become reckless. Your brain tries to protect normally, but when the shot takes effect, you play chicken with the train, you skydive, you rock climb without the harness. Every morning, the newspaper headlines read something like, a beauty treatment promised to zap fat, but brought disfigurement. Explosive is thrown as priest visits orphanage. Runner dies trying to break world record for daily ultras. The clinic does not intervene when a death occurs. The medical examiners have no knowledge if you visited the clinic, so when you die, the classification on the death certificate is lacking. How do you classify an overdose of action when in reality you have an absence of innate emotion? There is no standard cause of death or phrase that can satisfy what the real story is. But maybe that is the point.
Mhm.
And then the micro is called paper image, which is in backwards trajectory. A paper doll does not have a serrated blade as an accessory in her back. The people of proximity pay attention to the dresses and heels the life-size version wears. They profess they will cut a doll in her image. They want to change the fashion every hour and place her in a box for safekeeping. They carry her around. She crafts her own likeness with glossy pages filled with pancakes, spoons, and water that become collaged outfits. Only paper is permitted. She creates the doll with no face. The life-size version wears a child-sized dress today, and they tell her she looked like a doll. If only she were flat, she could fold into a paper airplane and fly away. Thank you.
Oh, love that ending, Tammy. Tammy Evans, thank you so much for reading both stories. Wonderful. Excuse me. Next we have, excuse me, Abby Mansella. I really apologize, Abby. Abby Manzella. Abby Manzella is the author of Migrating Fictions, Gender, Race, and Citizenship in U.S. Internal Displacements, winner of the Society for the Study of American Women Writers Book Award. She is published with the Three Penny Review, Moon Park Review, Bureau Dispatch, Tramset, and Flash Frog. Find her on Twitter at Abby Manzella or Abby Manzella on bluesky.social. Abby Manzella.
Thank you so much, Francine. As a college professor, I find that people often confess to me about their own college experiences. And this piece started shortly after someone told me that they really, really meant to get to class when they were in college. They meant to. A house of learning. The frat house considers its situation, calculating the college boys like math problems. If Jim wakes up before 11, will he go to his 11:15 class? Jim's class is only 347 steps from his first floor room to the library next door, and he said that his professor motivates him to want to read The Last Exit to Brooklyn. But will he get by the Call of Duty game already in progress in the common area? If Brendan gets home from Kelly's dorm room before Frisbee starts on the front lawn, will he do his problem sets? The house has long been the property of some Greek letters, somehow putting the building and its quarter-acre plot outside the powerful domain of the university, so that everything from its painting to its lawn care is paid for by the fraternity. The house is in exile in the midst of plenty. That's not to say that there isn't plenty coming into the house as well. The house just feels a yearning to be filled with the knowledge that the dormitories seem to possess, even though college boys fill the frat house's every room. There are those who try. Benji, in his earbuds and sweatpants, completes each assignment before the kegs roll in for the weekend. But in order to have the quiet he needs away from foosball, he studies at the library. The house cannot gain knowledge learned outside its walls. The house needs a plan. On Tuesday night, when it sees Benji head for the door, book bag aloft, the house locks its own front door. Benji twists and turns the grand building's brass doorknob. "The door's stuck," he shouts to no one in particular. The 8 others in the house are in the midst of their own pursuits. He tries the door again to no avail. He looks around and then attempts to lift open a window. Sealed. Shit. Benji calls again to the other guys, finally earning some attention from Jim and Tyson, both on the first floor. Once Benji announced their trapped plight, Jim yanks and twists the doorknob too. Eventually, they decide to break a window. Tyson grabs his pitching wedge and aims it towards the window, shouting, "4!" as he swings. It bounced off the glass like a rubber ball. "Shit," Tyson says in awe. "Nothing stops my swing." "Something weird is going on here," Benji says, backing away from the window. The boys quietly take in their surroundings. They feel a presence. The boys feel the house trapping them inside. The house is glad they finally feel its power, but the house wishes it could speak. "Study time," it would say if it could speak. "Consume knowledge," it thinks. "Feed me." What the boys do, though, is shout up to their upstairs frat brothers, "Yo, bros, we're trapped." And without a second thought, "Let's party." Down the open staircase stream the 5 other teenagers, giving each other's high fives, unconcerned about their incarceration. Out comes the Coke, cranberry juice, and club soda. Out comes the red Solo cups and no ice. Out comes the vodka, scotch, tequila, and rum. The mixtures they concoct make the house ill even to consider. They grab a football out of a smelly gym bag and toss it from room to room. Even after a lamp is broken, the house quakes. Somehow, the boys keep their drinks in hand. They laugh into the night, unconcerned about the paranormal activity around them. They continue partying into the next day and the next when the doors stay closed. They develop new drinking games that combine beer pong with a real-world Mario Kart, where they push each other across the floors on cafeteria trays stolen for winter sledding. On the 4th day, the house, not known to be violent, just desirous of learning, recognizes its defeat. These days have been worse than what it normally experienced. At least it had previously learned the cheat codes for karate chop moves and had discovered Easter eggs in the latest online games. There is no other learning to be had here. The house unlocks its doors. Thank you.
Oh, awesome, Abby. That was a wonderful story. And at the very beginning, I was reminded of, I was a high school teacher for 20 years, and the excuses that you get for being students come in when they're late. And I remember this one kid saying, I said, "Why are you late?" He says, "Oh, because I just got to school." The logic of that was like, and he said it's straight faced. I can't believe that. Well, because I just got here. That's why I'm late, because I just got here. So, well, I know I'm going to have more respect for the houses that I'm in after hearing tonight. But both wonderful stories, by the way, about houses. Well, I'm going to read now. I'm sorry, Abby Manzella. I'm going to read now for William Hawkins. We just have a few readers left. Thank you for hanging in, everybody. William Hawkins. William Hawkins has been published in Granta, Ziziva, and Triquarterly, among others. Originally from Louisiana, he currently lives in Los Angeles and their shadows. Two balladeers approach the cold Pacific in jean jackets, one with hair red and gold, one with hair black and curled. The sun has just fallen. The sky is Easter purple, carnation pink, and sleeping blue. The two walk through the mirror surf of a low tide and pause. A wave kneels, washes their feet, and retreats. She, with red hair and gold, thinks on what she sees. Her eyes scales the ocean is measured upon. She wishes the world flat, the globe a blue-green saucer. She would live in a witch's cottage at its edge and spend her days ankle-deep in the surf of her doorstep, netting the flotsam of the world before it falls over the edge. Of this, she would make new islands, beaches of broken glass and styrofoam palm trees, shoals of lost boogie boards. She would trap wrecked ships and make doll houses of them. People with drowned sailors whose eyes she stitches with black buttons. They would sail to her for prophecies, yet her words would be lost to the roar of water falling off of the world. She breathes in the ocean, deeper still, until each cell of her body is full of salt water, until in bliss she ruptures and falls to sea, at last boundless. And I'm going to stop there. That is William Hawkins. If you want to read the rest. Next, we're going to hear from Luella Lester, who is just a really beautiful presence online. She's just like whenever I post something, she's just always one of the first people to acknowledge it, and I love people like that. I mean, who doesn't love people like that, right? She's a very and she's just been publishing so much herself. It's wonderful to have her here tonight. Luella Lester is a writer, photographer in Winnipeg, Canada. Her writing has appeared in Blink Inc., McQueen's Quinterly, the Dribble Drabble Review, New Flash Fiction, Cleaver, The Odd Magazine, Flash Flood, The Games Room, at Full House, Lit, Potato Soup, Litro, Yellow Mama, Prairie Fire, The Antigonist Review, and a variety of other journals and anthologies. Her Flash CNF book, Glass Bricks, is published by At Bay Press, and you can find her luellalester.blog. Luella Lester. She here? Yeah, you're on mute, Luella.
Thanks, Francine. I taught for 25 years, junior high and high school, so I've heard it all. And I also learned to be very polite and nice and comment and stuff. And I'm feeling guilty because I haven't been doing anything in the chat because I kind of get distracted from the listening. So anyway, know that I've been really enjoying all of your work and all of the readings and everything. So, okay, I'm going to read, I did a trilogy called the She and He trilogy in SoFloPoJo. So I'll just get right to it. So the first of the trilogy is called She Liked to Think. That the look on his face was only a resting one, not judgment or disapproval, or that the sneer was there to protect his real, much softer side, that he was a golden retriever hidden in a pit bull's body, that the pain of his childhood had taught him to never show weakness, that the way he held his cigarette in the air was only to keep the smoke away from her because he knew of her allergies, that the book in his hand was only there to impress her, and he actually preferred cheap thrillers, that he wasn't just another mistake in her life, and she could love a smile into his lips. And the second in the trilogy is called It Grates on Him. Even in her sleep, words slide out like strips of zucchini, not flakes of dark chocolate that might cling to her bottom lip until his finger reaches. Nonsense smeared like stinky cheese stuck between her teeth, not lemon zest to poke and stir his mind. Her cartoon character voice like shards of ginger flung across the room, not the puff of nutmeg softly landing, all of it piling up, tumbling out, spilling to the floor. And the third of the trilogy is called Those Watching. Those watching were not at all surprised when they took each other on. In the time it takes to light a candle, their words had warmed like wax, soon dripping hot, then burning them in place. So when they cooled and hardened, it was too late. They were stuck together in place. And I brought, yesterday, I had a piece come out in Cult magazine. There are a few cult magazines. This is the one in New York. And so I thought I would read it. And I just wanted to say, some of you may not be that familiar with Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. We're very cold in the winter and we're super hot in the summer. And so we talk about the weather a lot, although I didn't in this, I don't think. But it's a really gritty, sort of rough city, but also like the arts are really important here, all of the arts. And but we have a lot of problems with people that don't have homes, living on the streets, mental health, drug issues. And I have friends who have children who've had problems, etc. So this piece was sort of, I was thinking, you know, sometimes we forget that it's normal people that get to those places and people. So I just was thinking about that. So it's called Past Imperfect. Lopsided, Mom was wrapping, tucking, pulling the shoelace, demonstrating a perfect bow. Now you do the other foot. Wobbled. Dad was visiting, his long fingers going almost all the way around the football, touching the laces that face away, throwing a perfect spiral. You give it a try. Broken. My best friend was punching the pocket of her brother's old baseball glove, telling me to watch so I can imitate her, then examining the laces and perfectly catching the ball. Okay, now I'll throw to you. Torn. My older sister was lending me her favorite dress, helping me into it, the ribbon lacing up too perfectly cinch at the back. Don't try to undo it yourself or let some stupid boy at it, eh? Ripped. The guy at the bar was pulling a tiny pipe from his pocket, smiling with his perfect teeth, hooking his fingers into the laces fronting his jeans. Can you help me with this? Damaged. He was lying on a lumpy mattress on the floor, eyes perfectly glazed, saying, honey, there's no choice. We need the money, while smoking the last of something laced with something else. Thank you.
Wonderful, Luella. Beautiful writing. Luella Lester. I'm going to read now for John Brantingham, who I thought was going to be here, but he's not. So I'll just read his story, and I'm going to read the whole thing because it's just very short. John Brantingham is currently and always thinking about radical wonder. He was Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park's first poet laureate. His work has been in hundreds of magazines and the Best Small Fictions 2016 and 2022. He has 22 books of poetry, nonfiction, and fiction. He is the editor of the Journal of Radical Wonder. Okay, a little case of death. Stephanie finds the goldfish dead in the fishbowl while her kids are with her ex. And she thinks she has enough time to run down to the pet store to swap them out, to keep her kids oblivious to death for another week or two. Keep herself out of that conversation for at least a while. But when she's taking her keys out of her purse, she realizes it's probably better not to lie. They have already learned so many lessons about loss when their parents broke up. She flushes the dead, empties the bowl, and wonders what they'll ask. John Brantingham. Okay. So our final reader for tonight is Nicole Brogdon. And Nicole Brogdon is a trauma therapist in Austin, Texas, interested in strugglers and stories everywhere. Her flash fiction appears in Flash Frontier, Bending Genres, 100 Words, Bright Flash, Dribble Drabble, Review, Centrofictionist, and elsewhere. Nicole Brogdon. You're on mute.
All right. Thank you for your patience. Got a little help there. All right. The first piece, I was writing these kind of unusual romance pieces, probably because I've been married for so long. And this one is called Amazon Woman, and it's in the SoFloPoJo. I'm dancing at the Black Horse Saloon with my blind date, Ted. They call me Amazon Woman because I'm duck under doorways tall. Some men can't bridge the distance. I'm two-stepping, shuffling in my lavender custom boots, trying not to flatten toes. Ted's keeping up, laughing with his eyes and his whole face. He hands me a Dos Equis. I decline, soft drinks only. He nods, orders 2 Cokes. I've learned not to turn myself into a circus show. Last summer, the boys lined up tequila shots like toy trains on the bar, then watched me down shooters. Dwight Yoakam warbled Fast as You from the jukebox. I started strutting, swaying. Dancing, I forget my body, forget my mean trucker daddy, forget that crooked cactus mama. Men yelled timber as I toppled backward onto the onto the wood floor, spread like a continent. Male faces circled my borders. One sunburnt cowboy hollered, I'd like to climb your peaks. Some hombre slung peanuts over my woolly hair. How big does a woman have to become to escape the animals? A handful of ladies helped me. One plucked peanuts from my mane, her forearm smoothing my scalp. 4 more clasped my hands. Come on, hun, sitting me up. Another left, parked her white van closer, then drove me home. But tonight I am upright, all right. And Ted's polkaing, hopping like a grasshopper. Did you hear about me? I asked. No, he grins, but I noticed you. Love me tender starts, mournful, slow. May I? Ted lassos my thigh, a Grecian pillar in his arms. Lovely. Leaning in, my hands under his armpits, I lift this compact man. I carry him outside under bright stars where lovers go. I raise him high and close to my face to show him that yellow moon. All right. The next piece is called Line, and it was recently published in Cafe Irial in a European journal that I like because it promotes all things Kafkaesque. And I was telling a friend, I have no more parents to die, and so I've lost some writing material, deaths of parents. So that's a little clue. So this is called Line. Gravity and the sun are pulling our bodies forward round this mountain. There's no stepping out of line, though I don't want to advance. Money won't buy anyone a deferral. That's Elon Musk, 4 places ahead. Some wait with a partner, chatting like they're waiting for salt rations or milk. A swaddled infant rests nearby on the ground, too soon in line with the rest of us. Sometimes we forget where we are, we wander off to pick flowers, we run errands, but we end up back here in line. Hooded sergeants working for the general keep us straight. These soldiers cradle rifles under their arms, explaining nothing, poking us forward, prodding our line up along the peak. Don't look at them. At the front of the queue, the general faces our line. He grasps the hands of the lead person, then flings that body high through blue air into oblivion. Our dad left this way years ago, cigarette dangling from his mouth. Look up, that one looks like Mom. That voice, that raucous hyena laughter, cutting through clouds. The too short jeans, a ceiling fan run amok, skinny limbs outstretched like fan blades. She's pretty while she leaves. Whoosh, defying physics, our mother vanishes through a black hole. Back at Mom's cottage, her unfinished books, her seed packets, Monday's vitamins, scattered about on mahogany furniture. Above me now, there's a puncture in the indigo, a straight shot through the atmosphere. No more elders blocking my passage. I trek forward in my old boots. They serve coffee here, black like you prefer, and toasted egg sandwiches on good bread. I'll be sorry to leave. And you, waiting near me with your vanilla scent, your slender arms dangling, you remind me of our mother. That easy laugh. Sister, I'm glad you're here. Not much time left. The line inching faster now, me ahead of you. I hope it's brilliant, the last view. Expansive like childhood skies above us. When I reclined in crabgrass long ago, seating you on my flat feet, propelling you up, up. You calling, do it again. Me pushing you into the azure blue. Thank you.
Beautiful and well worth waiting for, Nicole. Nicole Brogdon. That was, yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
So thank you everyone for such a wonderful evening. I loved hearing your stories. I loved them the first time, obviously, because you're here, but I love them all over again. And please keep submitting to SoFlo because, you know, otherwise we have nothing to publish, right? People don't submit. It's one of those little facts of life. You know, please also feel free to put your Twitter handle, I'm sorry, your X handles if you're still on X, which who knows anymore, right? Or your Blue Sky, or where can we get in touch, or your website, you know, put your websites in the chat while we're still here, and you know, connect with each other, you know. I always think the Flash world is just so nice and so welcoming, and you know, I'm so happy to be part of it, as I'm sure all of you are. It's a nice place to be. So thank you again, everyone, for coming, and have a beautiful night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Francine.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Good to see you all.
Thank you
Good
so
to see you,
much.
Micah.
Thank you, everyone.